Hey there. Let's dive into a pretty significant development in U.S. foreign policy, the Trump administration's decision to repeal a Biden-era directive that linked U.S. arms transfers to human rights considerations. It's a complex issue, but I'll break it down so it's easy to understand. This is based on a report from the Washington Post, explained in my own way. If you like this style of explanation, let me know. Let's get started. So, here's the big picture. President Trump has just undone a policy from the Biden administration that was meant to ensure U.S.-made weapons aren't used in ways that violate international humanitarian laws. This policy, called NSM 20, was introduced by President Biden in early 2024 during a very tense time, Israel's war against Hamas in Gaza. The war had caused massive civilian suffering, and Biden's team was trying to balance supporting Israel while addressing concerns about how the conflict was affecting innocent people. Now, what did Biden's policy actually do? It added extra requirements for countries receiving U.S. weapons. For example, these countries had to promise, in writing, that they wouldn't use those weapons in ways that break international law, like targeting civilians. It also required them to help deliver humanitarian aid, if they were blocking it. The idea was to put some pressure on Israel, which had been criticized for not allowing enough aid into Gaza during the war. But critics said the Biden administration didn't enforce the policies strongly enough. It was more talk than action. Fast forward to now, Trump's team has scrapped this policy entirely. His national security advisor, Michael Waltz, issued an order saying the policy is gone, effective immediately.
Why?
Because Trump's foreign policy motto is America first, and his administration seems to prioritize selling weapons and strengthening alliances without worrying too much about human rights concerns. In fact, Trump has already resumed sending weapons to Israel, including a shipment of 2,000-pound bombs that Biden had paused last year. This move has sparked a lot of debate. Supporters of Biden's policy, like former State Department official Christopher Lemon, say getting rid of it sends a dangerous message that the U.S. doesn't care how its weapons are used, even if it leads to more civilian deaths. Others, like Senator Chris Van Hollen, argue that while Biden's policy wasn't perfect, it at least pushed Israel to allow more aid into Gaza at critical moments. Now, with NSM 20 gone, there's fear that anything goes. Countries can ignore humanitarian concerns and use U.S. weapons however they want. But here's the thing. Even without Biden's policy, there are still U.S. laws on the books that tie arms sales to human rights considerations. Laws like the Foreign Assistance Act and the Arms Export Control Act are supposed to prevent weapons from being used in illegal or harmful ways. The problem? These laws aren't always enforced strictly. Sarah Yeager from Human Rights Watch put it bluntly. If the Biden administration had followed existing laws, this memo wouldn't have been necessary. She's now challenging Trump's team to prove they'll actually follow those laws. What does all this mean for the bigger picture? Well, it shows how different presidents can shape U.S. foreign policy in dramatic ways. Biden tried to emphasize human rights, but his efforts were often inconsistent. Trump, on the other hand, is doubling down on his America First approach, focusing more on economic interests and military partnerships than on moral or legal concerns. This shift could have serious consequences, not just for places like Gaza, but for how the world sees America's role as a global leader. For example, if U.S.-made weapons are used in ways that harm civilians, it could damage America's reputation and fuel anti-U.S. sentiment around the world. And for allies like Israel, it might signal that they have a freer hand to act without worrying about U.S. pushback. At the end of the day, this story isn't just about one policy. It's about values. What kind of country does America want to be? One that prioritizes profit and power, or one that tries to uphold principles like human rights and accountability? That's a question worth thinking about, whether you're a student, a senior, or anyone in between. So, what do you think? Does this feel like a step in the right direction, or does it raise red flags?